Welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast for small business owners and entrepreneurs, where we show you how to build a successful business and to have a life too. We're going to dive into another topic that helps us make more money in less time and to get off the treadmill so we can experience a life of significance. And now, your host and the author of the #1 best-selling business book, Making Money is Killing Your Business, Chuck Blakeman.
Hi, and welcome back to the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that's a lot of fun for me. It may not be fun for a lot of people, but I like this topic. I'm going to talk about leaders not being managers. Managers are never leaders, and why managers are not necessary. I'm going to develop some unpopular but well-researched ideas around how businesses structure themselves around layers and layers of management. And I'll show how management and leadership have nothing in common. In short, management of people is never helpful. Leadership of people is always helpful. We're going to unpack that. Management is for machines. Leadership is for people. Or another way to say this principle, manage stuff, lead people. Let's get started. This is a two-part series. In the next two short podcasts, I'm going to lay out what might seem like a radical case for eliminating managers altogether while promoting leadership devoid of management as the solution for what we believe is the participation age that we are in. And I'll show that this world without managers is not actually a new idea, but was well established around the world before the first factory was ever built and the first manager ever became commonplace. Let me start by saying managers, the individual human beings themselves, are not the problem. The industrial age factory system model that imposes top-down management as a structure is the problem. As I've said in other podcasts, managers have been given the most unfair, impossible job in the world. Make sure everyone is skilled, trained, happy, productive, supported, and satisfied. In the early 2000s, Google did a study called Oxygen. The Oxygen study came up with an initial 8 motivators that people need in order to be successful at work, and a few years later, they added 2 more. Here are those 10 motivators. 10 things everybody needs at work to make them successful. I want, number 1, good coaching and mentoring. Number 2, to not be micromanaged. Number 3, I want to feel and truly be included. Number 4, I want to know my required results. Number 5, I want good communication and listening. Number 6, I want career development and performance evaluations. And number 7, I want clear vision and strategy. Number 8, I want to have my technical skills developed. And then the 2 newer ones that came along a few years later that I also agree with. I want collaboration across the organization. And number 10, I want strong decision making. I want every one of those things myself. And at the same time, I don't know a single human being on the face of the earth that is really good at more than a few of them, barely passable at a few more, and really lacking at some of them. And yet we put all this on managers and tell them to deliver these things to the people they manage. It is so unfair. It's as unfair a requirement as you could possibly come up with. We are setting up managers to be gods, and then we all hate them because they can't deliver the entire list. It's no wonder that Salary.com found that 15 of the 20 reasons people will leave a job are directly related to their manager. Get rid of managers and you eliminate 75% of the reasons people will leave you. And it's why if you search for the question, do managers make people more productive? You won't even get an answer to that question. Instead, you'll get many millions, tens of millions of articles telling you how bad managers are and how they need to improve. It's not their fault. They've been set up to fail with this incredible list of 10 things that no one human being could possibly deliver. I said this in another podcast, but it bears repeating. The #1 reason we think we need managers is to make the people under them more productive, right? Enough to pay for the manager's salary, what we call the manager tax, and they should add some more profit beyond that. Otherwise, why have a manager? Yet here's the kicker. There's not a single study that I have been able to find in years of research that even bothers to test this theory do managers make people more productive? It's just an assumption we make. And then we built an entire top-down industrial age factory system structure around that assumption. And 98% of organizations still use that industrial age factory system as their basic operating system, the top-down pyramid. The good news is there are enough organizations running with no managers at all to show us that the real world clarion answer for the question, do managers make people more productive, is emphatically no. Managers do not make people more productive. Let me say that again. I'm very comfortable saying it. I've done enough research on it. Managers do not make people more productive. When you look at the few dozen large organizations and the thousands of small ones that have moved on from this top-down management system, they show us just the opposite, that managers make people less productive, managers make people less happy, and managers make people less likely to stick around or be fully engaged. And they make people definitely not want to give their best energy. As we've alluded to in other podcasts, and we'll now get to in more detail, there is a simple and elegant solution. We don't need to get rid of all these people. We can turn them into leaders, and we'll need fewer of them, but a lot of them will go back into production. We need distributed decision-making teams where the managers, many of them, most of them will go back to being productive as part of the team as one of many. They're no longer the manager operating with 10 reports. Now there's 10 people working together using their gifts and their talents to help each other out. Distributed decision-making teams, we call them DDM teams for short, easier to say. DDM teams that do not need the presence of a manager over them. Again, let me say that while management of a team is not helpful, as many corporations have discovered, leadership on a more strategic level is critically important, even more so as we eliminate the impossible job of manager. So how do DDM teams solve the impossible manager position? Very simply. What if we stopped looking to one individual to play God the manager and deliver all 10 of these things, and instead found maybe 2, 3, or even 4 people on the team who could split these things up amongst them based on who is better at delivering which ones of the 10 motivators. In a team of 5 people in any function in any company, you will find 2 or 3 people who can split up the 10 motivators among them, and the result is the team experiences significantly more of the 10 motivators, if not all of them. It's going to beat one person every single time. And the manager can go back to being part of that team. Instead of trying to deliver all 10 of the things, they can continue to deliver the 3 or 4 that they're really good at, and then they distribute the other 5 or 6 or 7 to other people on the team, and they all work with each other to self-manage and create distributed decisions. This is not theory or philosophy or pie in the sky woo-woo crap. This is hardcore success strategy. We don't have to hope that somebody someday finally eliminates managers and hands the 10 motivators to the team to deliver to themselves. A few dozen giant corporations and hundreds of small ones have been doing this since at least the 1950s, which is when Bill Gore, founder of W.L. Gore, the makers of Gore-Tex, that wind and rain fabric, he started his business in his home with his wife, Vivian, in 1959. I'd love to talk to him about this. He's no longer with us, but he decided from the outset there would never be any managers at W.L. Gore. Today, there are over 10,000 stakeholders. They're not employees because they don't have managers. In this multi-billion-dollar corporation, and for 60 plus years, there have been no managers. I highlighted a few of these in the last podcast if you want to hear more about them. But the fact is that these are not wild-eyed outliers. There are too many mainstream companies having operated without the top-down industrial age factory system for way too long for it to be an anomaly. I mentioned this company before, but in 2012, Haier, they're a Chinese company that makes white goods, refrigerators and microwaves and dishwashers. Haier eliminated the entire middle management of their organization in 2012, releasing 75,000 full-time and 90,000 outsourced team members to build DDM work groups, distributed decision-making work groups. Traditional thinking might predict this would create a dip in production having done this, but it only served to build on the DDM work Haier had already been doing. As with Haier's experience and as participation in concepts are introduced, we do not see dips, pauses, or instability, but immediate improvement in both production and engagement. Only when organizations make the mistakes of first taking away a traditional support function does this occur. Talked about this in another podcast. They move away from imposed hierarchy to organic leadership is an additive process. We add practices and tools that create horizontal relationships that by extension reduce or eliminate dependency on the vertical relationship to the point where people say, why do we need managers? And managers say, why am I managing? I can use my time and talents in a much better way for this organization as a leader or back on the team. Here's a warning. Don't eliminate management or imposed hierarchy as a first step, but simply add practices and tools for people to rely on, gradually replacing the factory system structure. We talked about the very first one of those that I would recommend you do in a past podcast when we talked about the mission-centered organization and how we all decide we're now the only boss we have in our organization is the mission. In a future podcast, we're going to propose implementing the practice of having everyone be a leader as one step to eliminating management. We'll show you how to do that. In this podcast, we clarify the difference between leadership and management and why leadership should be pervasive throughout organizations where management of people no longer exists. Stick with me. This sounds confusing. It's not as confusing as it sounds. It only sounds that way because we've been programmed to see management and leadership as the same thing and both of them necessary. We're going to clear that up. While some companies understand the importance of leadership, their misconceptions about managing people stand in the way of developing effective leaders. Are managers necessary in business, or could we replace them with fewer strategic leaders who perform none of the traditional management functions? A few thousand companies of every size have operated without managers, again, some of them since the 1950s, and probably some before that. Many of the ones we profile in these podcasts have discovered that the role of management is both unnecessary and unhelpful. These innovators outperform their peers in productivity and staff retention by understanding that management is the problem, not the solution. Again, I'm not throwing stones at managers, humans who have been put into godlike positions to fail. I'm saying we need to eliminate that godlike position so that people can actually be successful. To introduce the practice of distributed leadership, we need to deal with the confusion surrounding the difference between management and leadership. Management consultants and leadership consultants are to blame for this. They really are. Even though managing people versus leading them leads to radically different outcomes, most universities and most management consulting firms have conflated these two ideas of management and leadership so much over the last 100 years that we no longer know the difference. There are two different words for these things for a reason. They are very different concepts. Another way to see the vast difference between leadership and management is to trace the historical roots of both. Leadership is much harder to trace than management, largely because true leadership is an organic thing that arises when people decide they want something or they want someone else to impact their life situation and performance. Management, however, is actually very easily traceable throughout history to people with power and authority, subjugating others with little or no input. Leadership rises organically throughout history, starting with human awareness, I assume, and the search for meaning, and later with the rise of democracy and other social, political, and technological shifts. True leaders have always emerged without regard to hierarchy or birth situation. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and countless other citizens with no rigid social ranking became heads of state or influenced their countries and their cultures for good in democratic countries because people willingly followed their compelling mission, even though they had no authoritative position. That's leadership. Interestingly enough, the first written mentions of people being managed is in writings by Hammurabi's code like 5,000 years ago related to slavery. This makes sense. Anytime you require people with little or no viable possibility of gain to do a lot of work, the only way to get them to produce is power and control. We see this management model then carried through the Middle Ages into serfdom, into the professional military, which was mimicked by the first international merchants. When factories arose, They just kept going with the same military management model, and the factory system was born and canonized as the only way to run a business. You can put a military hierarchy right beside a company hierarchy, and you're going to see a one-for-one relationship all the way from the bottom to the five-star general and the CEO at the top. In the participation age, businesses no longer feel the need for this hierarchy, and they see the long-term damage it has done to business and the reputation of businesses in general and to humanity, frankly. Theodore Roosevelt said, "People ask the difference between a leader and a boss. The leader works in the open and the boss in covert. The leader leads and the boss drives. Managers are bosses. Leaders don't have to be bosses." We'll keep going with that thought. As individuals, we intuitively see that management and leadership are in direct opposition to one another. When I meet a manager, I get the sense they are important. When I meet a leader, I get the sense I am important. I read that on a text once. That's just somebody intuitively looking at this and saying, man, managers, they're important. Leaders, they make me feel important. That's an intuitive understanding of the difference. Let's look at the manager first. Management is defined, in my opinion, by this definition: the use of power and authority to command and control for the benefit of the management. It is a top-down pyramid scheme. We use the people at the bottom for the benefit of the people at the top. The use of power and authority to command and control for the benefit of the management. I have a great cartoon that reflects this definition. It shows a manager poking his head into a staff person's cubicle with the caption, "Hey, don't forget, I need to take credit for your report by 3 p.m. The two hallmarks of the participation age are participation and sharing. If we assume people want to participate in building your great organization and also want to share in the results, they don't need someone to control and command them. It dehumanizes them, it makes them into machines, and they know they're being used for the sake of the organization. Nothing increases the disengagement tax faster than when people who have no input are being used for someone else's benefit. I want to talk for a second about how management is actually naked codependence. Traditional factory system management, which is what most organizations run on today, top-down management, guys in ties telling everybody else what to do, is nothing more or nothing less than pure, unadulterated codependence. If we call management what it truly is, codependence, we would be less likely to inflict it on people in our organizations. Codependence has an enabler and someone who is enabled, the dependent. Managers are enablers. Very Well Mind, a website, defines enabling as this: doing for someone things they could and should do for themselves. That's codependence. Note that this is very different from helping, which is doing for others what they are incapable of doing and then training them to be able to do it themselves. It is also different from training. Training is where we teach others how to do something for themselves, and then we can get the heck out of the way. Psychology today gives 3 attributes of an enabling parent, which equally applies to the position of a manager. Enabling parenthood and enabling managership is the same thing. So manager-employee relationships create the same unhealthy codependence. Here's those 3 things that psychology today gives us attributes of the enabling parent that I believe also check in with the manager. See if they work for you. Being inflexible. Because I told you so, or because I'm the boss. I've never heard that before, have you? I'm the boss, I'm the manager, because I told you so. Most of the time, these aren't even spoken. We wouldn't dare challenge someone to the point where they have to say that. They are already in place due to the utterly clear hierarchy that gives one person the ability to fire 7 or 8 or 9 people below them, hire, fire, and generally make all the important decisions that affect the lives of these teams that they manage. As reflected in Scott Adams' Dilbert cartoons, management is an insecure position that does not respond well to being challenged, even though the open secret is that the team as a whole generally has arrived at a better solution long before the manager, and they just have to wait around for the manager to tell them what to do. And then they do what the manager tells them what to do, and it doesn't work out, and they don't care because it's the manager's problem, and off we go. Scott Adams made millions of dollars off that. Being inflexible and being the person who says, I told you so, or because I told you to do it because I'm the boss. Just assuming you're supposed to be the one that has to tell everybody what to do. Number two, having your children, or in this case, your employees, meet your needs. Managers are important. Leaders make me feel important. Management is really about using power and authority to command and control childlike employees. Shut up, sit down, don't make waves, live invisibly. Childlike employees who just sit around and wait to be told what to do. It is an inherently self-promoting occupation with misdirected allegiance. I'm going to take credit for your report at 3 p.m. Managers serve the boss and many times unconsciously use others to meet their needs for advancement. It's all about me serving the next boss, and then when I become that boss, serving the boss above them and somebody else serving me. And it's this power struggle that goes on. And who gets caught in the middle of that? All the quote employees, the children at work who are just around to be told what to do so that you can look better on paper. You can have a bigger budget, you can have more people, and then you'll get promoted again. Third thing that makes managers codependent, wanting to solve problems for others. And this is not helpful for parenting either. Managers are taught that they should be better at solving problems than the people they manage. It's one of the rationales for why they make more money. But it's pure codependence. They shouldn't be making money for that. They should be actually have money taken away from them for being codependent. But again, doing for others the things they could and should be doing for themselves. People begin to adapt the false narrative that they are not competent or responsible enough to figure things out for themselves, and then they learn to like it. After all, their home life already includes enough stress and decision making, so why add more? They'd just be on the hook for more measurable performance at work too. So the manager likes telling, and the team members like being told. Codependence. That's exactly what it is. I talked to one guy in a company of 300 people that made the switch from the industrial age system to the participation age. And he said, I took my job at this company specifically because I knew I would never have to use my brain. I could show up every day and they'd tell me what to do and I'd go home at 5 and then I could use my brain at home, but I never had to use it at work. He figured out he could use his brain. He actually got to where he liked it. Codependence. That is the core problem with management. Managers struggle with all three of these. But the last one, the solving problems for others, creates the most negative impact. An organization design strategist at a giant software company I won't label because it was a very short engagement. They asked me how they could enhance their flagging innovative spirit and basically how to restructure the entire organization of more than 75,000 people. I responded that the first thing they needed to do is look around for the people who are serving others, who are promoting others, who are making others look good, and then getting the heck out of the way. These natural leaders should then train others how to arrive at great solutions together and then be gone, be invisible, go help somebody else somewhere else, diminish their own role. Look for people who are promoting other people's roles and diminishing their own. The response I got from the 11-person organizational design team at that giant software company was this: well, that's going to be a problem here because we promote people specifically for their personal ability to come up with great ideas and solve all the problems, not for teaching other people to do that. And I call that the heroic genius model. And I'm sorry, there's just not that many of them around. You can't find Steve Jobs in every person in the world around you, and you don't need to. There's a better way to do it. In this software company and thousands of similar companies, this is how it works. The heroic genius develops an idea and then recruits others to work with them to make their idea popular or legendary. And they do it by hook or crook. Some do it by being wonderfully nice. Others do it by threatening. It doesn't matter. The manager is going to coerce you into getting on with their idea however they can do it. As a result, the heroic genius gets promoted and everyone else learns the same everybody for themselves mentality. If you want to get promoted, got to look out for number one. It's a classic example of a manager exerting control, power, and authority for the sake of the manager. Yet this software company views it as their most valuable kind of person. It's no wonder they're losing their innovative spirit. People commit to what they create, not what you create for them to run. Let me say that again. That's pretty important. People commit to what they create, not what you create for them to run. Dilbert was right. I don't care. It's not my thing. Input equals ownership. You'll hear that so many times in these podcasts. Input equals ownership. To the degree that I have input, to that degree will I have ownership. But since the governed in a classic top-down factory system pyramid scheme have little input in the decisions that they must carry out, they have no ownership in those initiatives. They get Dilbertized. One manager at this company was baffled because he switched people's career paths without discussing it with them because it served the manager and the company to do so. So he just took dozens of people and just, here, you go over here and you switch from the people track to the product track, and you go from the product to the people, completely blowing up their career paths. And he was surprised that he was getting pushback because he's the manager. He's supposed to be able to just move people like pawns on a board. Let's start calling the role of manager what it really is, a codependent enabler. Realizing this helps us eradicate it from business. So part of this idea of being codependent and this third problem with being a manager wanting to solve problems for people is that we tell. We gave that up front. Managers tell, leaders ask. We'll say that again. But as this software company illustrated, the manager's most codependent habits are the following two things: solving and deciding things for others, and then telling others what to do based on that solution. So I see a problem as a manager, I go into my ivory covered office and I sit down and I figure out a great solution. I come up with a spreadsheet and lay it all out and decide the whole thing. And then I call a meeting. I call these audiences with the Pope because they're really not meetings. It's just a semicircle of 8 people around a manager. And the manager, the Pope, tells them what they've come up with in their Dilbert solution. And their job is just to go do it. And then, of course, the good manager will say, so what do you think? And the people are saying, let me see, what does he want me to think? Because I don't want to get fired. If you audit a manager-led meeting, you'll notice that telling is the default way to communicate with others. Telling. Asking, on the other hand, defines the leadership style. Having a manager tell you what to do is the opposite of empowering. When a manager gives the order to put this nut on that bolt at this rate, those receiving that command can feel used and dehumanized. They become part of the machine. But the only obvious choices for them are either to fully comply or to quit or be fired. Managers who solve, decide, and tell dehumanize the workplace by treating people like machines. Machines need to be solved, decided, and told. They're stupid and lazy. They're just going to sit there unless you actually motivate them in a very special way. Leaders do it quite differently. They train others in ways that engage them in meaningful work by first asking as many questions as possible, getting them to the place where they can do things without the leader, and then they get the heck out of the way. Leaders should be promoted or given more money because they have less responsibility. Managers, their heads are spinning right now. It's like, wait a minute. The only way for me to get promoted is to take on more people, more budget, a bigger office space, more machinery, more output. I got to have more responsibility. Well, I think we'll find that companies that are really doing this right are realizing that model is desperately broken. Since it is the job of the manager to solve, decide, and tell, managers regularly delegate tasks. Put this nut on that bolt, which makes people feel used. When you delegate a task, people feel used. When you delegate a responsibility, people take ownership. Leaders want to train, so they delegate responsibility. Not put this nut on this bolt, but make a great washing machine. And that creates ownership. A waiter has all the responsibility and none of the authority, which lies with the host, cook, and the restaurant manager. The waiter just executes the orders. Imposing a task like this without authority causes burnout. Delegating responsibility with authority fosters participation and eliminates codependence. It's one of the biggest discussions I have to have with leaders around the country as I travel. And the lights go on. People who've been in business for 20 or 30 years, oh my goodness, I know what my problem is. I've been delegating tasks all my life. That's why I'm so worn out. I keep the responsibility. I don't delegate the responsibility, I delegate the task. Do you know how you're delegating the responsibility? Very simply, because those people are now in charge of the entire process, and they come back to you and report what happened. You no longer have to go find out what happened. Managers go find data. Leaders have the data come find them by giving people responsibility for the whole thing and then having them come back and report. Delegating responsibility with authority fosters participation and eliminates codependence. Okay, we're halfway there. This is just part one of this two-part podcast, helping us see how the top-down industrial age factory system structure isn't working. We're ending today with the understanding that codependence is the hallmark of the classic top-down management system and is central to what is making for an unhealthy organizational design. The solution is to turn all managers and team members into healthy, interdependent leaders, co-leaders rather than codependent, and we're going to do that in the next podcast. We'll be contrasting leadership with management, which is the best way to show that the two have nothing in common, and then we're going to promote leadership without management as the solution. I'll see you there.
That wraps up another episode of the Get Off the Treadmill podcast. If you found this podcast helpful, please subscribe and hit the like button to ensure you are receiving the latest tools you need to grow your business and to get off the treadmill. If you want more information on the 3 to 5 Club, the Crankset Group, or to book Chuck as a business advisor, speaker, or workshop leader, you can contact us at grow@cranksetgroup.com. Until next time, have a great week.